tonight's edition of KARE News.
Good evening. David Brom is guilty. The jury reaffirmed its earlier decision and found Brom was sane when he killed his parents, younger brother, and sister with an axe. And that story tops tonight's News 11.
The jury deliberated more than 21 hours over 3 days before reaching the second verdict shortly before noon today.
Today's guilty verdict comes 20 months after the bodies of Brom's family were found in their suburban Rochester home and ends one of Minnesota's most publicized trials. News 11's Carolyn Meriden has been following that trial, and she reports from Rochester.
Understand we have a verdict?
Judge Nancy Morris arrived at Olmsted County Courthouse this morning shortly after a verdict was reached around 11:15. Attorneys who for 20 months have been absorbed by the murder trial of David Brom also arrived within minutes to hear the verdict. At noon, with church bells ringing outside, Judge Morris read the jury's verdict. Guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder, meaning 4 mandatory life sentences. David Brom showed no emotion, no reaction, something that has perplexed many during this trial. Although emotionally drained and disappointed, defense attorney Terry Walters found some good in the verdict, which has raised the question of Minnesota's often criticized insanity defense standards.
This may, in a way, be a blessing in disguise. Had the jury acquitted David, it would have been great for David. But if the Supreme Court throws out McNaughton, it might help many more people than just David who are mentally ill.
The McNaughton ruling has been the crux of the second tier of the trial. The 2 deciding factors for this jury: David Brom knew the nature of his acts and knew they were morally wrong. The guidelines prosecutor Ray Schmitz used throughout the trial to convince 12 people David Brom was criminally responsible for the murders.
And I want to commend the jury for their obviously very dedicated efforts. It's been a very long and very trying and emotionally racking trial for them. They've done a lot of work, and they've obviously entitled now to go about their business.
And the jury, which had a stressful task of deciding David Brom's fate, with Rochester keeping close watch, wanted nothing more. No reporters, no cameras, just to be left alone. Sheriff deputies were trying to accomplish those wishes. Throughout the trial, they have been exceptionally protective of this jury.
They just want to go home, and they just want to spend their own time and gather their own thoughts and get some rest.
Tonight, the unanswered question is whether David Brom will serve his prison sentence consecutively or concurrently. That question will be answered tomorrow morning at 9 when David Brom makes his last appearance in Olmsted County Court for sentencing. Carolyn Meriden, News 11, Rochester.
Whether that sentence is consecutive or concurrent, Brom will serve a minimum of 17.5 years before any chance of parole. He will most likely serve that time at the St. Cloud Reformatory. However, an appeal is automatic with a first-degree murder conviction.
A 2-alarm fire in South Minneapolis tonight has left 2 families without a place to live. The fire started on the 2nd floor and spread to the roof of the duplex at 2633 14th Avenue South around 7 tonight. Both families were home at the time and escaped unhurt. In fact, the family living downstairs left the television set on, and it was still working after the fire was put out. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The White Bear Lake Church, where anti-Soviet graffiti was scrawled a week ago, today hosted U.S. Senator Rudy Boschwitz, who came to reassure the Ukrainian family, which was the target of the threats. Anti-communist messages were found on the exterior of the Calvary Assembly of God Church, apparently aimed at some new Ukrainian immigrants who attend the church. Senator Rudy Boschwitz is also an immigrant, having come to the U.S. with his family many years ago.
The experience is not much different than the experience that I had as a child when I came to the United States, and I will tell them not to judge America by a single act of prejudice.
The graffiti has now been cleaned off the church. Police are still looking for suspects in that case.
7-year-old Jamie Fisk, who just yesterday checked out of the hospital, is back in the hospital tonight. Jamie left the University of Minnesota Hospital yesterday after recovering from surgery to remove her spleen last week. Jamie stayed last night in a hotel with her parents, but was readmitted to the hospital this morning with internal bleeding. Doctors should know more about the condition tomorrow. For the second time in a month, a hurricane is battering the United States. This time it's Hurricane Jerry, and it came ashore at Galveston, Texas a couple of hours ago. Jerry barreled into the Gulf coastline, packing sustained winds of 85 miles an hour. But the biggest threat from this hurricane apparently is the possibility of torrential rains and flooding because of unusually high tides. The storm surge is expected to be nearly 8 feet. Meteorologist Sonny House will have more on the hurricane a little bit later in weather.
The Vikings are back in first place tonight after an impressive victory over their interstate rivals, the Green Bay Packers. But the newest Viking stole the show. Herschel Walker started his Viking career off with a bang, running 47 yards on his first carry. Herschel finished the game with 148 yards on the ground, helping the Vikings to a 26-14 win. News 11's Mark Daly introduces us to this phenomenon called Herschel Mania.
People literally went out of their heads wild over Herschel Walker today.
I'm excited about Herschel.
We want to see the main man Herschel today.
Other great number 34s have played here before, but this was something special.
Herschel Walker.
He had to wait his turn, but it turned out to be worth the wait. After hesitating a second, Herschel returned to kick off 81 yards, the first time he touched the ball as a Minnesota Viking. 3.5 minutes later, Walker's first run from scrimmage went for 47 yards. By halftime, everyone loved him. Linesmen loved him.
The way he moves, just kind of like a snake.
Cheerleaders loved him. Mike Lynn loved him.
He adds a new dimension to our offense, and he really lifts everybody up.
And Sid Hartman was saying, "I told you so."
He'll mean a heck of a lot. Mean the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Felt that when the trade was made.
Yeah, they were going crazy over Herschel, all right.
Woo! Herschel Walker, fantastic. Super Bowl bound, yeah! Woo! Go Vikes!
But how can you help but like a guy who even runs off the field at the end of the game? Mark Daly, News 11 in Minneapolis.
And we'll hear from Herschel later in sports and in our expanded coverage in Vikings 89, along with all the game highlights and analysis. And there is a lot more to come tonight on News 11. A big change in the weather is on the way. Sonny House will have the forecast.
Also ahead, a mid-air explosion leads to a crash involving 2 planes today in Texas.
And in tonight's Extra, how a child's fascination with fire can turn tragic. Wall Street investors are bracing for the opening of trading tomorrow morning to see if the Dow can bounce back from Friday's 190-point tumble. Stock traders are watching the Tokyo market, where it's already Monday, hoping to get an early indication of whether Friday's scare will stretch into Monday on the New York Stock Exchange. In the early going on the Tokyo Exchange, stocks are down about 1%.
In Datelines, an F-16 jet exploded in midair today near Fort Worth, Texas, killing both people on board. Witnesses say after the jet exploded, it careened through the air for about a mile before crashing onto a runway at Carswell Air Force Base and then skidding into a B-52 parked nearby. Nobody on the ground was hurt. In Soweto, South Africa, 8 anti-apartheid leaders were released from jail today as part of a goodwill gesture on the part of the government. All 8 had been sentenced to life in prison for allegedly trying to overthrow the government. And at Cape Canaveral, the countdown of the Space Shuttle Atlantis launch will resume at midnight tonight. The launch has been rescheduled for just before noon on Tuesday. Security at the Space Center will be the tightest ever because anti-nuclear activists have threatened to try to stop that mission.
An event to raise money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association made quite a splash in Apple Valley today. Scuba divers showed their best stuff at the MDA's second annual Divers Fair. Of course, the pool was the focus of this event as the divers played underwater games and had underwater contests. And News 11's Sonny House stayed dry. He was on hand to serve as MC for the day's events. Didn't see you there.
You were dry. Right here.
Had a fun time out there today.
You got a lot to talk about. We got that hurricane, which is kind of taking a back seat to all the news we have today, but it's a serious threat.
It certainly is. Nothing like Hugo I'll mention, which is good news for the folks down there. But last night at this time, we talked about a tropical storm, and just like that, became a hurricane. And we'll take a look at the latest mugshot from outer space, get you acquainted with exactly what's happening here tonight. And here is the latest view from outer space of Hurricane Jerry, packing winds at about 85 miles an hour tonight. As with any hurricane that makes landfall, there is the threat of tornadoes, and you can see the watches in effect for southeastern Texas and southwestern Louisiana tonight. The big nuisance with any storm of this magnitude, of course, is the enormous 4 to 8 foot storm surges that blast in ahead of it. And the reason these are enhanced a little more tonight is because of the rare occurrence known as the astronomical high tide. This occurs when the Earth and the Moon are in their closest proximity to one another, an event called perigee, and that also increases the gravity pull between the Earth and the Moon. To add insult to injury, the Sun is aligned with the two planets too, and that increases the tides on the order of about 1 to 2 feet. So a lot of flooding problems down there tonight, and we're getting our fair share of rain around 11 country tonight too, and we'll show you that on radar in a couple of minutes. First of all, today for a high 64 degrees after an overnight low of 49 degrees, a trace of rain so far out at the International Airport. Some rain around 11 country as I mentioned a minute ago, and we've got 50 degrees in the cities right now. A north wind at 13 miles an hour. The dew point this evening is at 45 degrees, humidity 68%. And the pressure is currently falling at 29.92. The view from outer space shows all kinds of cloud cover over the upper Midwest, and the latest weather map shows the reason why. Cool, dry air spilling in from Canada, colliding with warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that frontal boundary on the latest weather map down to the south of us, separating those two air masses. And you can see that this is going to be the scenario for the next couple of days as that cool air continues to tumble in from Canada. 35 right now, International Falls, 50 here in the cities, a warm spot, 66 in Des Moines. The cold air will be with us tomorrow. Looks like mid-40s for highs and mid-40s right through the rest of the week. And we'll get up to about 45 degrees tomorrow, I think, with plenty of cloud cover, especially in the morning throughout most of the afternoon, and then the skies will start to clear up as that cold air tumbles in, and that means things will be a bit chilly over the next couple of days. When we return, we'll take a look at live Doppler radar, show you where the rains are, and we'll look ahead into early next week. We'll take a peek at live Doppler radar tonight, show you where the showers are. A line from Somerset down through Farmington into Mankato, around Lake City and Rochester getting a pretty good bath, and some heavier storms around La Crescent, Lansing, Minnesota, and Spring Grove. We could see some sprinkles on and off tonight through the evening hours, otherwise cloudy and breezy, down to about 41 for an overnight low tonight with a north wind at 10 to 20. Tomorrow the north wind's at 15 to 25 miles per hour, mostly cloudy, some scattered morning sprinkles possible. And then on Tuesday, an overnight low of 29 degrees, only up to 44, but it looks like by next weekend we could be back into the 50s, still below normal, but feeling a little bit more comfortable than this little cool spell.
Just a little.
Regular heat
Thank
wave.
you.
Thank you. Just hitting the extra, keeping kids from playing with fire.
We'll take a look at the reasons kids start fires and some of the help that's available for young arsonists. In tonight's Extra, fascination with fire is something most of us can understand, but for some children, that fascination can alter lives, sometimes tragically.
In Minnesota last year, there were approximately 200 confirmed arson fires. Almost half were set by children.
Some are impossible to ignore: Cyweck's lumberyard fire, the Donaldson's fire of 7 years ago. But large fires start with a single spark, and young arsonists often start early. The face of utter innocence. The face of utter destruction. When the two come together, the results can be devastating. Lucy Nordahl knows. Her son Josh started setting fires at age 2.
To walk over, he would get a candle off the table in the living room, or a paper towel off the rack, and on the burner, light the paper towel, the candle, walk over, throw it in the trash, up goes the wall, or he'd go into the bathroom. You know, there went the linen closet.
By age 4, Lucy says Josh was in his fire-setting prime, and she was a wreck.
Very alone, very scared. I wouldn't sleep at night. I mean, the first one happened at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Ask Josh today, at age 13, why, and his answer is simple: fascination with fire. This arson fire at Cyweck's Lumber last May hardly looks like child's play, but it was. Kids turn to arson for all kinds of reasons: boredom, curiosity, fascination, peer pressure, sometimes anger, or a need for attention.
He set a fire under the baby's crib, and we're thinking maybe that was because he wasn't getting the attention he had before.
Terry Parks is talking about one of the 350 kids he has counseled away from arson in the past 3 years, all because of an horrendous fire in 1986 that took 9 lives, 6 of them children. One died in his arms.
Working on this little boy, I saw my boy's face sitting there, so that's how it all came together.
Those emotions forced him to volunteer his time to counsel young fire setters, mostly from 2 to 7 years of age. Only one has gone back to fire. Josh was his first, and he stopped setting fires 3 years ago. Today he learns about good fire as a Boy Scout, but that doesn't mean the old fascination is gone.
What would make you go back into it?
I don't know. Probably fascination. Like someone's force is trying to put me back into it. Something like that. I don't know.
You really are afraid of that?
Yep.
It's a rush. I don't even think drugs can compare to it.
The inmate Will called John's 40 or more arsons were fueled by anger. Maybe because he spent time in 42 foster homes by the time he was adopted at age 6. He says poor self-esteem was a problem that led him to drugs and alcohol, and that unleashed his anger.
I would break the windows and throw a match in and run away.
His 4th arrest for arson landed him at St. Cloud's Correctional Facility, and he says today if he can stay off drugs, he'll stay out of trouble.
I'm 23 now, and if I don't start doing something with my life pretty soon, I'm going to spend my life behind these bars.
What can we do? Well, John says parents are the key. He says they need to give their kids time and an I love you once in a while. Lucy Nordahl and Terry Park say education is the key, and early on, not only in the 5th grade as happens now. They say we need to hire more people to work with the young kids and keep the little fires of today from turning into the infernos of tomorrow.
And coming up on News 11, Randy Shaver tells us about the great one becoming the greatest one tonight.
And we'll see the man creating all the excitement today at the Metrodome. If you saw that Vikings-Packers game today, you felt a change in the weather when Herschel hit the field.
If you saw it in person, it was even better.
That would have been great.
Yeah, it was great. The Vikings, I think, are a complete football team tonight now that Herschel Walker is here. Herschel rushed for 148 yards, the first Viking running back to rush over 100 yards in a game in 2 years. And when you run well, you pass well. And when the offense moves the ball well, the defense can rest. When it all comes together like it did today, it's a thing of beauty. The first time he ever touched the football in a Vikings uniform on a kickoff return, he hesitates, then goes. 51 yards. Now the play was called back because of a penalty, but it was a sign of things to come. Lost in all the Herschel excitement was the play of the defense. Reggie Retland with 2 interceptions. The Vikings stuffed the Packers today 26-14. A reminder, Vikings 89 with Tom Ryther coming up in just a few minutes. We'll have complete highlights. Jeff Passett will take an inside look at the rivalry. I'll have more on Herschel Walker, all coming up on Vikings 89 in a couple of minutes. More on the Vikings win and on Herschel, but first Darren Nelson has announced he will not report to Dallas and he will retire. If reports are correct, that means the Cowboys will get one of the Vikings' conditional second-round draft picks. Well, Giants beat Washington. The Bears lose. They're now 4-2. Detroit over Tampa Bay. Seattle by the same score. Denver beat Indianapolis. Philadelphia 17-5. Here's the Raider final. New Orleans 3 touchdown passes, Bobby Hebert. Atlanta beat New England. San Francisco over Dallas. Miami over Cincy. Pittsburgh lost this opener 51-0 to Cleveland. They get revenge today. Game 2 of the World Series tonight. New Ulm native Terry Steinbach, it's gone. 3-run homer against the Giants in the 4th inning, and Oakland wins tonight 5-1. They lead 2-0 over the Giants. And the great one became 987 games less to score more points than Gordie Howe.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you, Randy. Just ahead, a complete wrap-up of the Vikings' impressive win.
That's right, Tom Ryther will have it all when we come right back with Vikings 89.
This is a great team, and like I said, I feel like I'm cheating them because I haven't been here that long. But it is a super team here, and you know I'm glad to be a part of it.
Hello again, everybody. You know, I don't know if I've ever attended a more satisfying Vikings game than today. The presence of a single individual of giant stature in football certainly made the difference with the arrival of Herschel Walker, and that coupled with the Bears' loss to Houston puts the Vikings in a first-place tie in the NFC Central Division. Let's go to all the highlights. After Green Bay had jumped to a 7-0 lead on this short pop by Herman Fontenot, the tide suddenly shifted to the Vikings. On the ensuing kickoff, Herschel Walker handled the ball for the first time as a Viking, and it served as an omen of things to come. Although the play was called back for clipping, Herschel Walker had arrived. In the second quarter, trailing 7-3, Rick Fenney looked like a new man. He roared into the end zone, putting the Vikings up for good 10-7.
The line did a great job blocking. The hole was there. It's pretty easy to run it in when the line does a good job blocking.
It's nice to have number 34 there. He brings the best out of everybody. So
you know, it's a pleasure to block for him too. You know he could break any one. It's just it's a lot of fun.
Now watch this run by Herschel Walker. He waits for his blocking, makes 7 yards almost out of nothing. He was to gain 148 yards rushing on the day and lift the record dome crowd of 62,075 and his teammates into a frenzy. Later in the second quarter, Tommy Kramer to Jim Gustafson. Blue Hands holds on to it, ekes into the end zone. 43 seconds left in the half, and the Vikings led 17-7. Here is the icer, third quarter. Kramer to Finney, and a touchdown. It was 24-7. And what about that Vikings defense? Keith Millard crashes in for a 7-yard sack of Don Mikowski, one of 4 Millard sacks on the day. It ended at 26-14 as the Vikings break the Packer jinx, and they're now tied for first. Let's go now to Jeff Passolt on the ending of the Packer jinx.
A rivalry intense as any other in sport, so tempers flared often, amidst constant taunting from Green Bay defensive lineman Tim Harris. But as far as the Vikings are concerned, Tim Harris can taunt all he wants. Sure, the Packers came into this game with the #1 offense in the league, but the Vikings proved why they have the #1 defense. And by winning, the Vikings got the monkey off their back. In this case, the monkey was Green Bay's disturbing domination of the Vikes. The Pack had won 4 straight and 9 of the last 11. But now that's history. And for the rejuvenated Vikings, revenge was sweet.
You know, we weren't going to take this team lightly this time. In the past, we might have taken them a little lightly, but the way they played us the last few years, you know, we were up for this game.
I think it's the first time since I've been here that we beat the Packers, and I think that we were definitely ready.
You know, it's a situation where both of us were 3-2, and we wanted to come out on top after this game was over to be ahead of them in the race.
And for Tim Harris, some final words of wisdom from Viking veteran offensive lineman Dave Huffman.
He'll learn as he matures and grows. He'll learn that you can't be a horse's ass all the time.
You could call it more fuel for the fire, because the rivalry resumes in 7 weeks. Jeff Passolt, News 11 Sports.
All right, a record football crowd of over 62,000 crammed into the Dome today to watch the game, but most came to see Herschel Walker, and he was something, and Randy Shaver has more.
Viking fans knew bright and early that today was going to be special. There was something on the air.
Walker the guy. Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker.
Now, Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker. Now, wherever Herschel is, he's a little bit better off than those 5 guys going to Dallas.
Yes, the coming of Herschel had everyone talking today, and for 148 good reasons. That's how many yards Walker rushed for. 47 coming on this electrifying run. He ran so fast, one shoe couldn't keep up. When was the last time you heard that said about a Viking running back? DJ Dozier describes Walker's impact.
You know, I didn't see that they would be hooked.
That's what a Walker does. He renders you speechless. Speaking of speeches, check out the media waiting for Herschel's arrival. I'll just take a peek in the locker room and see if Herschel's about ready. Yeah, just about there. Shouldn't be long now. Alas, Herschel Walker, king of the soon frozen tundra, has arrived, and boy is he happy.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. You know, I can smile now and really mean it. Before you sort of make yourself smile, but you can smile now and really mean it.
Yes, winning makes everything easier and a lot more fun. 2 things missing from Herschel's NFL football life until now. Reporting from the Dome, Randy Shaver, News 11 Sports.
And now, believe it or not, the NFC Central is up for grabs. The Chicago Bears dropped their 2nd straight game as Houston came from behind to win in Chicago 33-28. The Bears, however, were in control most of the way, and on this 79-yard touchdown pass from Tom Zech to Gentry, they took a 21-13 lead in the 3rd quarter. Gentry goes in saying, "Come on and get me." How's that for taunting? He paid for that later. The Oilers refuse to give up. Haywood Jeffries makes a great diving catch here on the moon pass, and Houston trailed by 21-19. Chicago had 28-26 late in the game. Houston's Alan Pinkin breaks loose 60 yards. Finally brought down at the 20 with 2 minutes left to go. The winning score came on this Lorenzo White touchdown run, 12 yards out. Houston does the Vikings a big favor, winning 33-28 over the Bears. Meanwhile, in Tampa, Detroit winning their first game of the year. Rodney Peete scored in this 5-yard run, only 23 seconds left in the game. The extra point gave Detroit a 17-16 win over Tampa Bay. And in the standings, well, the big thing is in 2 weeks, the Vikings have now overcome that 2-game deficit. They are tied for first with the Bears. They'll be at Detroit next week. I'll be there, and Jonah and Kevin, maybe next week we'll have more good news with number 34.
We will.
We will.
Thank you very much. That'll do it for us.
A phrase to live by, give the ball to Herschel. Good night.
Yeah, good night.